Got James Hollingshead, Antoine Vaillant, Samson Dauda and Hadi dead in the middle, Rafael Brandao, and John De La Rosa. So that looks to be your top six. And again, this was the first call out. So in a way, the top three looks to be kind of what we expected, and that's going to include Samson, Hadi, and I believe at this point Rafael. But you got to take your hat off to Antoine Vaillant, James Hollingshead, and John De La Rosa. We talked about this a lot leading up to the show, is third place and that third through sixth place. It really could be any of these guys, and I think I was most impressed that Antoine made the cut, that Antoine's going to be in the top six here. So it's interesting, John De La Rosa in here too. This is one of the better versions of John I think I've ever seen from a conditioning standpoint. And we talked about that going into the show, some of the updates that we saw during this past week of John in the hotel room, in the gym, in that good lighting. His conditioning looked really good. I think, on par with James and Hadi for maybe the best conditioned guys in this top six. So I think looking at this, if we're talking about the outside of the top three, I would say Antoine is looking probably like sixth place. James looks like fifth. In fourth place and third place seems like a little bit of a toss-up. They did a couple other call-outs with these guys. I think it's going to be John in fourth and Rafael in third. I think it's really close between the two because John is obviously razor-sharp conditioning here. I think definitely sharper than what we're seeing from Rafael. But Rafael is bigger, and he's got a little bit more of an impressive, more muscular physique. And when they did the call-outs, the subsequent call-outs after this, they had Rafael in the center pretty much the entire time, which would suggest they have Rafael in third, and they're comparing the other guys against him. But I still think that third-place spot could be kind of a toss-up between him and John De La Rosa. I was a bit surprised to not see Horse MD in this first call-out. You didn't see Justin. You didn't see Akeem. But you did get a really nice variety of guys in here. I think, James' conditioning was awesome. I think the one thing holding him back was kind of his midsection. His abs did look a little bit washed out, kind of blurry. It didn't really have that deep separation, which we kind of already knew. It's kind of a thing with James that we kind of anticipated here. Antoine, really conditioned. I think he put on a little bit more size in his upper body. He's always had, these really big legs, but his upper body never really quite matched. I think he kind of filled out his upper body a little bit more, came with really good conditioning, and I think that's why he's going to land in the top six. And overall, I think those placings, third through sixth, are going to be really tight. I think that's going to be really close between each of those placings. But I do think, like I said, I think it's going to be Rafael third. I think it's going to be John in fourth. And I think James in fifth and Antoine sixth, but I think those could swap too because they move those guys around a little bit in the later call-outs. But I'm going to go with James in fifth and Antoine in sixth. Now, the top two for the win. Pretty much what we expected here. This is what we've been talking about for basically the majority of the build-up to this show, is that this was going to be the Hadi and Samson show, that it was going to be between those two, and that's exactly what we got. I think we got 3 full rounds of just the two of them posing. So it looks like at least the judges see it as close between Samson and Hadi. But to be completely honest with you guys, as I was watching this, I feel like Hadi's got this. I think Hadi's conditioning here is just too overwhelming. I think he looks, honestly, significantly better than he looked at the Olympia when he lost to Derek. And I think if I'm Derek Lunsford watching this, I'm probably a little bit worried watching this. I think if Hadi looked like this at the Olympia, it might have been a different story because Hadi looks bigger here. His conditioning looks better. The poses that Derek beat Hadi in at the Olympia that were, I think, the tipping point for Derek taking that title home, the back poses, which is Derek's, that's his strong point. That's really where he excels. And I think that's where Hadi nailed Samson here. Hadi's back shots were really impressive and I think really improved. And that's not to say I don't think Samson looked good here because he did. I thought Samson looked good. He looked impressive. He looks shapely like he always does. He looks big. He's tall. He's got a lot of nice stage presence. He's very aesthetic for a bigger guy that's, close to 300 pounds, maybe 300 pounds on stage or somewhere around there. But honestly, I'm looking at this and I don't see an improvement in the conditioning of Samson. I think that was the factor that let Hadi beat Samson at the Olympia. Is Samson might be a little bit shapelier, a little bit more pleasing to look at than Hadi, but Hadi's conditioning just overwhelms him because Samson doesn't have that same level of crisp, just really razor sharp detail that Hadi seems to have. And like I said, I feel that Hadi looks better here than he looked at the Olympia in terms of both size and conditioning. I think Samson maybe looks a little bigger here than he looked at the Olympia, so I think Samson may have improved when it comes to size. But honestly, the conditioning from Samson looks to me about the same as the Olympia. So if Hadi beat him at the Olympia the last time they went head-to-head, and Hadi looks better now, in my opinion, at this Arnold, I think Hadi's winning this. I think Hadi's walking away with this thing. And it seems like the judges think it's close. I say that because they did so many rounds of just the two of them posing. So it must not be like a blowout for Hadi. It must be close. But with the difference in conditioning here, I think it's just so noticeable. Even if you prefer Samson's shape, if you prefer the aesthetic look of his physique, Hadi's aesthetic too. I mean, Hadi can pull a deep vacuum. His waist looks small in a lot of those front poses. So while you might prefer Samson, while you might say Samson is more aesthetic and a little bit more pleasing to look at than Hadi, maybe you would say Hadi is blocky or whatever. I think the conditioning difference is just too much of a factor here. I mean, Hadi is clearly on another level of conditioning than Samson. It's like they're on two different playing fields. And again, I'm not saying Samson's conditioning is bad. For Samson, this is pretty good conditioning. But to face somebody like Hadi, I don't see where this would be enough. And I would be really surprised, honestly, if Samson wins this, because Hadi, to me, this looks like one of the best. I don't want to say the best version of Hadi, but it's certainly better than the last Olympia. And I think one of the best that we've seen from him in a few years now. This is a really, really tight version of Hadi. And I think, like we said going into this show,